students and faculty are becoming increasingly creative for what they object to from a speaker. And it's reaching the point where these purity tests are so strict that it's hard to imagine who will be allowed to speak on a campus in the future.
It's just the latest in a series of protests across college campuses. Former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice canceled her graduation address at Rutgers amid uproar over her role in the Iraq War. And the head of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, withdrew from Smith College's commencement after criticism over the organization's policies in developing nations.
Students and faculty have absolutely every right to protest speakers they dislike. But when the goal is to make sure that person doesn't speak in campus at all, that's a bad sign for the marketplace of ideas that our campuses are supposed to be.
All right, folks, there you go. And as promised, we're joined right now by, well, you know him, author, essayist. I don't have to introduce P.J. O'Rourke, but I will introduce P.J. O'Rourke. And he is a great book out there, The Baby Boom, and also, I should point out, #1 New York Times bestseller. And he's written this great piece at the Daily Beast talking about if he were to give the Rutgers commencement speech, and it would be go forth and fail. Anyway, PJ, welcome aboard.
Thank you. I don't know who an acceptable commencement speaker is. Mahatma Gandhi, I guess, but technical problems, he's dead.
Yeah, well, and so is Generalissimo Francisco Franco. He's still dead.
Yeah.
All right, but let's talk about this. And I love when the news reports say, and I've heard them, and they make it sound, not this particular report, but that Condi Rice backed out. She backed out. She was either asked to or she just did it gracefully because she didn't want to cause a stir and be a distraction. So she didn't back out. First of all, from what I understand from the people at Rutgers, guests we've had on from the Republican Club, there was vandalism-type violence going on when these protesters, the students, protested her appearance. They went to one of the offices and in one of the buildings. And you had 200 faculty members, so-called professors, who craved diversity, of course, of skin color and nothing else, leading the charge to make sure she didn't show up. And when I had one of the professors on, he said she consciously lied. And I say, how do you know? But let's say you're right. What did she consciously lie about? You know what he said? Aluminum tubes. I said, excuse me? He says, it's been proven. Aluminum tubes cannot lead to nuclear weapons. I said, that's the lie? I mean, I can't believe these people.
I'm sure he was in the physics department, too.
He was a history professor.
Yeah. In fact, it might have, was it Rudolph Bell? Because he was...
Yes, Rudy Bell.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or as I called him in my speech, Rudolph Jingle Bell, and it is to be hoped that Professor Bell does not have a very shiny nose. You could fool me on the aluminum tube thing, and that wasn't exactly what Condoleezza Rice went to college in either. There was people forget that there was a general agreement, including the UN, that Saddam Hussein had a high probability of having mass weapons of mass destruction. And it was a situation that Saddam Hussein did nothing to disabuse the world of. He apparently had been smart enough to get rid of his weapons of mass destruction, but he didn't want anybody to know that.
Right.
It was.
But PJ, it's not even the point. It's not even the point.
No, of course not.
It's the stifling of freedom of speech when it comes to conservatives.
Yeah, and it's not exactly like Condoleezza Rice was the big hawk in the nest at the George W. Bush administration. But yeah, the fundamental. I mean, if you're looking for the fundamental problem, it would be that old coots my age, victims of the '60s. The real loser element, I mean, some of us came to our senses, at least partially, but the real losers wound up in academia and the long march through academia. And all this 60s gibberish lives on our campuses. And, of course, by now, these people are in their 60s, in their 50s. And they're in powerful positions within the academic institutions. And so, Americans, your people are being taught by lunatics especially in the softer subjects, like history of film and stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, my son is going into high school next year, God willing, and so I dread the decision. I dread what he's going to find there, and he's got a big mouth, so he's going to get in trouble in college, if not before, because he dares to have an opinion. Now, these conservative speakers, it's not limited to Condi Rice. It's been others. It's been going on for quite some time. They have
and since when is the head of the IMF, by any stretch of the imagination, a conservative? I mean, conservatives have pretty much the same criticism of IMF policies that these lefty kids do. And yet, I mean, we'd be interested to hear what the head of the IMF has to say for herself.
Absolutely. And look at Rutgers. Look how they screwed it up. First of all, look what they did to a probably the most successful black woman, politically speaking, in the history of the United States of America. And then they take Eric LeGrand, who was paralyzed playing football for Rutgers.
Yeah,
they invite him
down.
Yeah, they invite him. Then he tweets out how excited he is and how he spent the weekend writing his commencement address. And then they screw him and say, oh no, forget about it. And then because of public pressure, they made him share it. I wonder if he got any of the $35 grand that they were going to pay to Condi Rice, and that I'm sure were going to give some to former Governor Kane. I wonder if he got any, or he got screwed there too.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd like to know myself. And the other thing is that, I mean, if you're going to be like a protest nut, Kane was the head of the 9/11 Commission. And I seem to recall that the protest nuts they have all sorts of issues with that.
Well, George Bush and Dick Cheney rigged the bombs and they imploded the building.
Right,
you got to remember that. All right, so this is insane, and it's got to change. Let me ask you about Dinesh D'Souza, who I think is a great man. He's done great work. He's not afraid to speak his mind, and that's what I'm afraid is at work here. From what I've heard from attorneys, the case that he's involved in, it usually, is a misdemeanor. It's nothing. They overlook it. That's what I've heard. But they charged him with illegal campaign contributions, with lying to officials, and his trial was supposed to start this week, and now it's just broke earlier today that he's pleaded guilty to making illegal contributions. He faces up to 2 years. He's not expected in this plea deal to face jail time. They're expected to drop the most serious charge of lying to officials, and that would carry a 5-year jail term if he were convicted of that. So he cut a deal because he doesn't trust a New York City courtroom and jury. I look at this and Michael Grimm, and I'm no fan of Michael Grimm, but the timing on Michael Grimm, to me, the only Republican in the New York City congressional delegation, here so close before the 2014 midterms, to indict him and put him through all this right now. I just worry about where we're headed in this country.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a Kafkaesque use of the court process, and I tell you, I am totally confused. I know Dinesh, I like Dinesh, and I trust him, and I'm totally confused about what he was supposed to have done wrong. I mean, you got the Supreme Court over here on one side saying basically, sky's the limit on campaign contributions. Anybody can do anything, And then on the other side, you get, what looks to me like, I suppose it's a little bit more than a technical violation.
Well, supposedly he asked friends to contribute to Wendy Long, who was running against Kristen Gillibrand at the time for the New York Senate in 2012, allegedly promising to reimburse them for their donations. And you can't do that, obviously.
Yeah, I guess you can't.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll be damned if I can understand, what's wrong with that in the way that I understand what's wrong with robbery and murder,
anyway.
Real crimes.
PJ, it's always great to talk to you, sir.
Hey, it's good to talk to you.
And everybody should check out not only my commencement speech to Rutgers Geniuses, Go Forth and Fail, at thedailybeast.com, but also, of course, PJ O'Rourke's great book, The Baby Boom. Thank you, sir. Great to talk to you as always.
Oh, good to talk to you.
Take care. PJ O'Rourke, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Yeah, I mean, look. You probably should never do anything if you're not 100% sure it's legal, or another way to rephrase that is don't do anything if you have questions that it might be illegal. I try to live by that philosophy, but I think I've been told they made a bigger deal about this than they needed to. On the Steve Malzberg Show. Don't go away.